So this chapter starts off coming back to All Might encountering All for One. Previously, we've been with Toga taking on Uraraka, so the outside world has kind of been cut off for the most part, and we don't know what had happened with All Might and All for One. We also still currently don't know if Toga is alive or not, but probably not, just going to guess, but there's a chance she could be alive. But now that that battle's over, we're coming back to All Might taking on All for One, and we saw previously that All Might's briefcase and car was like disassembling, and it looked like it was becoming some kind of armor or something, and we had speculated that All Might was going to have some kind of like Hulkbuster armor or something, and this chapter is confirming that yeah, he does have some kind of like armor Hulkbuster. It's actually called Armored All Might, and it gives him like this mech suit that's actually pretty powerful and looks similar to how All Might looked in his prime, but like in robotic form. And I do have some issues with this, and it goes back to what I talked about previously about how, first of all, if they're able to make something this powerful, because as we'll see in this chapter, it is pretty powerful, like he's able to fight against All for One using this, then why didn't they make multiple of these suits? Like give them to multiple people who could use them, like All Might, who is nerfed at this point, unable to use his quirk, but just weakened overall, like in a weakened state, even for just a base level human. If they could have given technology like this to other capable individuals with good quirks or quirks that could complement this technology, they would have had a much better time taking on the villains at this point. Like they wasted a lot of their manpower and utilities making that underground elevator, which ultimately just led to nothing, when they could have been making multiple of these like All Might Hulkbuster suits that everyone could be using that's comparable in power to a young All for One, essentially, right? I mean, I'm not saying that that guarantees victory, but I think they would have been doing much better than what they are now than just singularly giving this to All Might. But that's neither here nor there. It also goes into, I thought that maybe a better route to go with All Might having his power back again for one last time would have been All Might going down similar to how All for One is going down right now. And that's by Eri using her quirk to rewind All Might to a time when he was powerful, because that's what's currently going on with All for One. Yujiko was able to reverse engineer the quirk destroying bullets that Shigaraki was able to steal from Overhaul, which he was able to produce from experimenting on Eri's quirk. And Yujiko was able to make like the synthetic version of it that, I don't know, was like a capsule or something. We don't see how All for One uses it, but whatever Yujiko was able to do, it produced this effect of Eri's quirk that rewinds All for One perpetually. So he will eventually rewind to nothingness, but it's kind of like a slow drip kind of thing that makes him younger slowly. So right now we see All for One in like his 20s, I don't know, his college years possibly, taking on All for One. But he's been rewinding back from like being over 100 years old at this point, I guess. And we also see that his quirk factor has been altering as well, since he's been able to access quirks and powers that he hasn't been able to use before. So I thought it would be cool if Eri used the same thing on All Might, except it was just from Eri herself, rather than like a backdoor reverse engineered version of it that Yujiko is using. And then her using that ability on All Might could revert him back to a time to when he was young enough, and that his quirk factor with One for All was restored enough as to where he was powerful. I don't know, take him back to like a time during the beginning of the Two Heroes movie, like the first My Hero movie, or just when he was actually fighting All for One the first time, like 7 years ago, or take him back 8 years ago. I don't know, just take him to a very powerful point. Or just have him lead the same path as All for One, like rewinding to nothingness, so that they both battle each other until they're nothing, and that's the ticking clock for both of them. But we're getting Hulkbuster All Might in the end here, which is, you know, better than nothing. I mean, he is still strong enough to fight against All for One in seemingly their final battle here, I guess, right? I mean, this is the end of the series, so I guess this is going to be All Might's final task, to stop All for One from reaching Shigaraki and Izuku. Because the ticking clock that All For One has here, you know, rewinding slowly, he needs to get to where Shigaraki's body is, you know, that's currently fighting against Izuku, so that he can merge with his original All For One body that's rewinding, so that he has full control over like the perfected Shigaraki body and the original All For One quirk, the perfected version, so that he can become like the all-powerful All For One at that point. Like he has the vessel, like the hardware that can finally accommodate his software, like his quirk. But now All Might is here attempting to stop him from reaching that, and this might be All Might's final moment in the series. Like stopping All For One from reaching Shigaraki. And it also goes back into the beginning of this chapter, when we see All Might remembering what Night Eye had told him, where he says like, continue down this path and you will encounter a villain. What awaits you then is an unspeakably gruesome death. And this has been going on for years, of course. And we thought, oh, this also meant that All Might is going to probably be killed by Shigaraki, like his DK quirk fits this description, right? But now it turns out that maybe it's not Shigaraki, and maybe it's just the young version of All For One, actually, in the future that is going to kill All Might. And I'm not really sure. Maybe it's like a double fake out. And now maybe this whole time, all of these red flags have just been throwing us off, and All Might is actually going to survive here ultimately. I'm not really sure. Mainly because Izuku was able to beat Night Eye's prediction, like his foresight ability from his quirk. So it's possible that All Might could do the same and ultimately wind up living here. But, you know, it also could mean that All Might might ultimately die here as well, and he's just killed by All For One in a big tragic moment, and then All For One eventually gets to Shigaraki, but I just don't feel like it's going to go down that smoothly. Like, I think by the end, it has to come to the point of Shigaraki rejecting All For One more than he has already. And I also think it has to be revealed that All For One gave Shigaraki the DK quirk. Like, that still hasn't been revealed yet, so there still has to be that moment, and I'm not sure how that timeline ties into what's going on here, because we also find out that this sequence is happening 20 minutes before the Toga and Twice army had faded. So what we were coming off of previously, this is like a look into the past. So this definitely concluded in that time span. But anyway, we see All Might going after All For One. And we're seeing the power of this suit here, where there's like multiple of these like shield-like projectiles that come out and surround All Might, and he's able to launch himself at All For One, just like a super-powered individual would. Like, this is like better than a quirk. The way that they're moving is like as if he had One For All. And it's so powerful that it like breaks off All For One's right arm. And it goes back to what I was saying, like, they should be able to give this to multiple people. Like, they're wasting their resources with the Troy system and all those other elevator and shielding systems. Like, if you just give, like, 12 people these suits, you would have such an easier time going against the villains here. But he's able to use multiple abilities here, like Charge Bolt and Black Whip. And then obviously this is a callback to what his students in Class 1A are able to do. Charge Bolt, Black Whip, Cellophane. We even get a shout out to Sugar Man in this sequence as well. All of the strategies and the abilities and the moves and combos that he's able to perform here are just all inspiration from his students, which I think is a nice touch and a coming full circle here, because All Might is the main person who inspired the hero generation in this world. So now the heroes that he's inspired have inspired him. And I just think that's a pretty cool touch by Horikoshi. And as All Might is tying up All For One here, he says that the suit and the car are meant to keep him in the fight for a little bit. And then he came up with the specs in a design request, and that what he has right now are from the fruits of the labor that he's made with his friend. And then we see Melissa from the first movie. This whole sequence implies that the armored All Might Hulkbuster mech suit that he has here is because of Rebecca in America. And this is also canonizing Rebecca. And I know for the longest time, we've had those statements from Horikoshi where he's saying that the continuity of the movies and the manga are one and the same, or they're aligned or whatever. But I just think it's cool that he's just fully showing us that, like, yeah, Rebecca from the first movie is a canon character. All of that stuff matters. Now, her dad originally is the one that helped All Might when he came over and trained in America during his like college years. But he's in jail right now because of the events of the first movie. So it's kind of just like Melissa, his daughter, who is like still there. She's also the one that helped manufacturing Izuku's red gauntlets that he has right now. So it just makes sense that she would help in making this armored All Might. But at the end of the chapter, we see All Might hitting All for One with just shoot style smash, and he's just leveling him. Like, it's so powerful. Like, it's crazy how powerful this is. Like, he's hitting him like as if he has one for all 70%, or maybe even more than that. Like, it's incredible how far this technology is going. And at the end of the chapter, he says, not once in my entire life have I gone into battle expecting to lose. Meaning that, like, he's not here to just exclusively buy time. Like, he does expect to beat All for One here. Like, he does believe in himself. And it makes me think, like, is he going to win? Like, is All Might going to survive this ultimately and beat the Death Flags? It is possible. But we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments, guys. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.